Welcome back to the McCoy Leadership Podcast, elevating your impact through valuable insights and conversations about leadership. Welcome back to the McCoy Leadership Podcast. Today we have Andrew Almazan with us, which has 15 years of experience driving growth in hospitality, digital media, and craft brewing. He's an expert in scaling business, building high-performance teams, and optimizing company culture. Andrew, welcome and thank you for joining us. Why don't you give us a little bit of the backstory of how you received such a diverse background and how you ended up where you are today?
Yes, thanks, Amos. I appreciate that. It's been a long and exciting journey. I like to say sometimes, hopefully just the beginning of the journey, but it's been exciting nonetheless. As you mentioned, three industries of experience, and in each of those areas and sectors of life, a big philosophy of mine has always been to take and reap what you can from your time in a place. Nothing tends to last forever, in this life, and just if we're just going down into a business standpoint or from a work professional standpoint, even the best highlight runs, they have their peaks and their valleys. So apply what you can. But in each of these industries, I've been passionate and fortunate enough to learn and take something away, and that resulted in eventually the development of my executive coaching practice and org change consultancy, Bravery Leadership Guild. Starting out, kind of in the media space, I was a staff writer for a digital media publication for a top 5 media company in the automotive aftermarket sector. Eventually, after 10 years, kind of worked my way and carved a path from the creative end of things, working on the publishing division, to eventually becoming the operations VP of people. And after that, and we can probably get into that kind of like later if you have any questions about my transitions. But long story short, after 10 years, had an opportunity to stay on in the company in a different capacity. But it was at that point that I had chosen, to kind of double down on this vision that at the time was kind of 2 years in the brainstorming phase. So that brings us to, the beginning of 2025. I've been doing it about a year and a half, just putting action into it. And outside of that, while scaling the clientele, while scaling it to be, hopefully the full time. That's definitely the vision for it. I'm also a assistant general manager for one of Southern California's original craft breweries.
Awesome. So I'm kind of curious. You had a full-time job. You were receiving a paycheck, and you decided to take this leap of faith and go do something on your own. So that tells me that somewhere along the line, something happened that fueled your desire to want to lead and teach others how to lead and to transform their businesses. What was that moment that made you say, you know what, I need to get out there and I need to give other people what I've learned?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's two phases that kind of come to mind. I think it was right in the middle of my journey at that media company. It was in a capacity whereby, in sense of like looking at the roles and responsibilities of the role I was in, and that was magazine editor at that time. This was about halfway in to that tenure. What I found that I started to really enjoy was helping other managers, other editors kind of get excited, almost reignite their passion. It's easy to get burnt out, and I think in any role or any function of the business, whether you're in sales, whether you're in publishing, whether you're in web IT, people have their ups and downs as humans. And I got a lot of passion outside of just, completing my own commitments as a magazine editor. I really enjoyed taking other editors out to lunch, facilitating roundtables, helping them drum up a market analysis for how they could, compartmentalize and crystallize goals that would get them excited, kind of get them, put the running shoes on and get them excited to jog towards a goal for like the next 12 months. I started to enjoy these extracurriculars, and then I started to ask myself, how can I do this formally? How can I actually create a function in the business where I can offer some formal value? It can be recognized as something of value by the other senior leadership team, and I could get paid for it as well, at the end of the day. So that started this kind of last leg of my journey at that media company, where I became the creative operations director. They gave me a chance, threw me a bone. They said, well, hey, you're pretty good at creating systems. You're pretty good at mentoring. So let's hand you both the publishing and then the video production division. So I led operations there. We did great. We did great and amazing things from a marketing standpoint, from a KPI standpoint for the creative division. And then at that point, I think I built enough of a track record of support and perception of value that I eventually became the VP of people operations for the entire organization. But at that time, it was like at the same time as I was advocating for the VP of people operations position, this bug had already kind of set itself in, where I was like, wow, my next milestone within this company is definitely to see how far I can go, maximizing this skill set. But at the same time, it was almost like a heartbreaking sort of bittersweet situation, because I remember as I was about to make that proposal to the senior leadership team to advocate for the creation of this position, which hadn't existed, I knew that in my head, walking up those stairs, I said to myself, like, if I absolutely crush it at this, there's going to be a point in time, 12 months from now, 24 months from now, where I'm probably going to be having this desire to do this exact thing, but with more industries, with more people, with more leaders, with more, as you mentioned, Amos, earlier, emerging leaders that need the help, that are not within these walls. So it was this weird sort of like moment for me where I was like very excited about the potential that I was going to have within this building, but then it also revealed the sort of the limitation, the eventual ceiling that I felt I would hit. And so I was a vice president of people operations for almost 2 years there, and economic headwinds hit media. If we kind of just go back 2 years ago, I think a lot of the things that happened during COVID and policies and, importing, policies caught up with the pipeline of media, our advertisers who are manufacturers. And that is what I was alluding to earlier with the disillusion of the role. So I was given this opportunity to stay on board in a sales capacity. I love that company. I think that we had a great thing going, and I think that they appreciated me enough to want me to stay. And they did a lot to kind of talk about the value that I could earn in a sales capacity. And they just had to, do away with this, function. That reinforced at that moment, that reinforced it for me, that this was my opportunity to either double down on that vision and bet on myself, or, take and no slight to anybody that's done it, but take the road of stability, of the sure paycheck. And I'm happy to say, for better or for worse, I took the road. I bet on myself. I think it's hurting a little. The bank account is definitely lighter than what I think, as a sales capacity. But in the long term, I think when I'm on my deathbed, I'll be able to, look back and be proud of that choice.
Absolutely. And speaking from experience, we have a consulting and leadership business, and the reality is there's it's kind of like having a child. There's never a good time. Like if you plan and think I'm waiting for that perfect time to jump out and do my own thing, you're probably never going to do it. And there's such a great feeling, I think, around understanding that no matter what, if you're within four walls of an organization that you don't own, there probably are going to be limiting factors. Now, at the same time, running your own business isn't for everybody, right? I mean, we need everybody to be there, but, speaking from, many years of being an executive, we're very happy to know that there are people out there that have skill sets like yours and like mine as well. Now, one thing I was curious about, since you did spend so much time in digital media, what is your collegiate background? Did you go to school for digital media, or, I'm just curious about that.
I went to school for English. So I got my bachelor's in English with a minor in comparative world literature. And then after about a decade from that, I got my master's of science in management and leadership organization.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
And the reason that I ask that was I think it's so important to point out. You started in hospitality, went on to digital media. Now you're involved with your own business and craft brewing. We could draw lines, but those businesses are not directly related. And as you have continued to climb the ladder, it's maybe even been, and I'm not suggesting that what you learned in college wasn't all good information, but what I'm encouraging young listeners that sometimes I feel like we pigeonhole ourselves into, all right, I have a bachelor's in English. I need to be an English teacher, or I need to be this. And we can use those skills, throughout our career. And that was why I was kind of drawing that point there. So you've had a lot of experience scaling operations, specifically or especially in competitive sectors. What are some of the core strategies that you have found that really help with scaling a business?
I love this question. Because when I think about every, potential change initiative or growth opportunity, whether it was in or is in hospitality or in media, it blends the best of, I think, a lot of different work styles. I think if you do it right as a leader, I think our one job is to almost, bring together the Avengers, so to speak, for things like this. And what I mean by that is these different aspects of work strengths that we see, this different, diversity of talent that you potentially have in your organization to bring that about. And it's a perfect blend of acumen with analytics, like we were talking about analytics earlier, Amos, and also having an innovative and creative spirit in your problem solving. So I think sometimes that's one person that has multiple strengths, but for me, it's about leading people and putting together a team who can look at a problem or create a grand vision and understand and respect the fact that to do a good job, to execute it at a high level, it's not just being able to, crush the P&L by, with financial acumen. Yep. It's how do you sales project using smart data points, trusting your instinct a little bit, understanding economic trends, but then also being a great facilitator in the room of your people. And I'm not going to say dumbing it down, but I'm going to actually say, making it more compelling for the people in a way for it to make sense and for them to care about it. And then how good are we at drawing creative problem solving solutions to get us to those bottom line or those objective goals. So it's, for me, I think that's my long-winded way of saying, I think it takes a great balance of art and commerce to get the job done. And I think that transcends any industry. You could be in construction. I think if you approach, art and innovation with a little bit of acumen, you're going to get some great results, as if you're in a media company or, you had to improve sales within a restaurant.
So you're suggesting that, one, the people we pick for the team make a difference, and two, just by coming up with a sales goal or a bottom line financial goal, that we're going to have, $100,000 additional in net profit this year. You can hit that $100,000, but still be running your business terribly and have all kinds of problems. So, but thinking specifically about those people, how important, as you're scaling, I would assume you would also be adding positions, possibly. How important is it that you find the right people, as Jim Collins said, from good to great, get the right people on the bus? How important is that part of scaling?
I think initiatives don't leave the ground if you can't get that part right. If you don't have that as a fundamental strength and skill set as the hiring executive, as one of the executives of a senior leadership team responsible for recruitment, you're going to have a very hard time. You're probably going to be great about coming up with ideas in the boardroom, but execution is probably going to be a little lackluster, in my opinion, for sure. Because at the end of the day, it's our workforce. Our workforce is carrying out and executing a brunt of the initiative. And that just inspires a quick thought. One thing that does tend to come up, in my experience, working with line managers, working with executives, both as a full-time employee and in a coaching and consulting sort of situation, is a lot of people have that challenge where the ideation is excellent, and then they'll look around them, and then they share with me some of their frustrations over a virtual coffee or something. It's like, I come up with these great ideas and they're so confident in what it will do, and hearing the idea, I share that sentiment too. I'm like, that is a really good idea. That'll do it. If I was on your team in a full-time capacity, that would really do something great for your business. But the problem they face is they look around and they're trying to get everyone to move. They're trying to lead their horses to water, so to speak, to execute on this initiative. And that's their biggest chief complaint, is like, I have these great ideas, and then they expect the greatness of the idea to be what moves their people to action. And what you tend to hear then, when you start, maybe if you have that great fortune as a coach or a consultant to be allowed by your primary client to interview key stakeholders who are going to be a part of this change initiative, start asking them, just kind of taking their temperament about, the environment. Sometimes, some of the feedback I've heard is, man, he's a great, or she's a great visionary, a lot of ideas, but just a little overwhelming.
Yep.
A little overwhelming, or I feel like I've never really given the room or the canvas to put a little bit of my own solutions. I feel like I have some good ideas. Whenever we get in meetings, I kind of get snuffed in the all hands meetings. So it doesn't even come back to that individual's ability to create a great vision. It's how well are you leading and stewarding these people to accept, adopt, and get excited about the change.
It's interesting because I have found, I think it all comes back to differentiating between communication and connection. Many times the leader at the top, for one example, maybe they have an idea and they go to their board of directors. They have a board of directors and they sit down with them, and they can't get that vision that's in their mind across to the board of directors. Let's say they get it across, or the board of directors approves whatever this initiative it is. Then the next step is getting that vision to the people that execute it, to what you just talked about. And so what I coach people on is that the vision to the board needs to be overarching and at 60,000 feet or at least 30,000 feet, but it also needs to be put into a context that they can see it, they can taste it, they can feel it, they understand what the objective is. You can't take that same goal and go down to the guy that is on the line manufacturing the craft brew beer and give it to him exactly the same way. You need to give it to him in a way that he can see how it impacts what he does and how that impacts the overarching goal so that everybody understands how they fit. But the biggest piece of that is just connecting. You know, you're never going to connect with people over data. Now, telling a story or getting them to see a vision, you can then connect with them. But I think that all comes back to just that difference between communication and connecting. You know, I've used the example many times of, you know, the Friday afternoon at noon email that goes out in a corporate environment. Nobody reads that email because it's Friday afternoon at noon. They're just thinking about getting to the weekend. Right. And, you know, that is not, although it is by definition communication, it is in no way, shape, or form going to connect with anybody. You know, getting up and taking a walk Friday afternoon at noon and talking to every one of the people that you want to get that message to, that is going to be a start to connecting. So I find that fascinating and see it in all aspects, even down to hiring people. You know, if you can't make a connection in that initial interview, you know, session, how in the world are you going to make a connection at a later point in time? So kind of thinking along those same lines, out of all of that, you launched Brave Leadership Guild and you're growing that. Tell us a little bit more about the Brave Leadership Guild. What are you trying to do? What gap are you filling in the market?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, I'm serving small business owners who appreciate and see the value in applying operational best practices that small to medium-sized businesses do who have a great track record. So I think that there's that interesting demographic of, you know, small business owners in the local area, or, you know, just even if it's e-commerce that they're running. I tend to see that there's two, you know, sort of mindsets in my time doing discovery calls. There's the people that have the resources, the vision to do it, and then they're just happy to kind of plug along, and they're happy to not have anybody other than themselves accountable for the outcomes, and they're just kind of trying to figure it out as they go, and they're happy about that. But then there's a different group of people, and this is the group of owners that I tend to work with, they were high-level individual contributors that also took a chance on themselves, betted on themselves. They're in the service provider industry. Like, I have these clients right now who are awesome. Like, then they've become the barometer for me personally about what I need to look for now and moving forward when I'm doing discoveries. Because if people don't have some of these X factor traits which it's the same thing that you were talking about with recruitment. I think as a good coach and a good consultant, we need to be good at recruiting our clients as well, because we can have the challenge of, you know, over accepting, you know, potential clientele.
Yes.
You know, and sometimes, you know, in the media industry, we talked about it a lot. Sometimes you have to fire your client. It goes that way as well. But they were previously in the healthcare industry. They had a solution that they wanted to provide and went into business for themselves. And you would not believe it. Like, they run their business as small business owners in the first 2 years of business better than some senior leadership team companies that I've had, you know, experience of being a part of for larger companies. Just their ability to balance giving initiatives a chance, you know, running tests and being disciplined about not pivoting too fast, you know, committing to a timeline and then making a strong executive decision about what they're going to do. They ask so many questions that I believe if executives ask these same questions in larger businesses, like, we would be further along in progress. So I think that that's really like my focus client right now. are these small business owners who were, high level individual contributors in businesses that took a chance on themselves, that are looking to apply some of those operational best practices.
So I'm just curious. I'm going to flip what you just said. Your really the point of your business at this point is focusing on small businesses that maybe want to bring some of the best practices that come from medium to larger sized businesses. So by henceforth, you're saying that there are lots of things to learn from some of the medium to, and larger sized businesses that we can apply on a small business level. From your experience so far, what would you take the other way if you went to a Fortune 500? What would you take to them to say, here's something that small business does that maybe you can learn from?
I love that. I think the other way is also amazing. There's lessons to be learned as well. I think we lose the ability to move as fast as a small business or an entrepreneur, would, in terms of failing fast or pivoting or openness to trying something. I think as a company scales, you would think that the decentralization would scale with it, thereby preserving that function of quick decision making. I think that that's where the idea of decentralized leadership, along with a highly successful organization that is seeing revenue growth, headcount growth year over year, to me that's the correlation, to try to do what you can to preserve decision-making power and speed and agility. But I think, and this is something that I've seen time and time again, with respect to the people that do just at the highest levels, I'll say decision-making gets slowed down. So being able to, preserve some of that, that venturesome spirit.
My favorite is you're sitting in a boardroom of a Fortune, 500 company maybe, and they're having an issue, and you come up with a solution for them. And you say, well, there's this new technology called AI. I'm just using this as an example. We could utilize AI to do this and streamline the process. And somebody sitting there would say, well, in 1979, we tried this process that, and it won't work, because somehow whatever they did in 1979 is being compared to the new capabilities of AI, or, the world famous, we've always done it this way. So I think it's interesting that is your key takeaway if you were going the other way to a large business, that maybe they should be able to speed up their decision making or ability to try new things. You also talk and emphasize on bravery and integrity throughout your leadership. Can you explain a little bit why bravery is important and what that means in a professional context?
Yeah, I think there's so many traits that one would benefit from to have a rewarding professional life and career. For me, those two hand in hand, I think, one, they speak to, I think, just like my life experience in terms of what's resonated and what's gotten great outcomes. If arguably leadership and the leadership journey is one of the loneliest journeys that a professional can choose to take on. And I want to clarify why I believe that is at the end of the day, if you're a good leader, you're spending your time looking out into the world and looking out into your people, looking out at your stakeholders that you're serving. But very rarely do you is there someone on the other end doing that for you? So you reach a place in your organization, even if you're a small business owner, where, you're doing everything in your power to get a successful outcome. No one's really sitting there saying really good job, really great decision, courageous decision. That's going to future-proof your business. So it takes a lot of self-belief and courage, I think, to continue doing the work, showing up and putting the work, to be, it is a buzzword, but I believe it, to be consistent, to be disciplined, over motivated. Where are you pulling that from? You have to have that sheer self-belief and commitment to your vision. And sometimes, if we're just talking, on the other end, if you become so successful, I think the world has a way of presenting opportunities and roads to people the higher we climb in success. And I'm not just talking financially. It might even be network power. It might be influence. It's like the human condition, right? And our ego and our ambition has that way of kind of blurring things sometimes. So for me, showing up with bravery, is an anchor, but the integrity aspect of it is a reminder that you will be successful. But along with that, on that journey is going to be some dangerous things that can potentially come up. Never lose kind of that moral compass.
Absolutely. I think, when you think through the past 30 or 40 years of the number of leaders, whether that be of businesses, political, where have you, the number that have fallen from grace, so to speak, because of something that they have done. And you mentioned being lonely, as a leader. And the one thing I always challenge any leader on, if they mention to me that they, it's lonely at the top, kind of that type of comment. If you're lonely, who are you leading? At the end of the day, if you're a leader, you're with some group of people, so you shouldn't be. Now, if you're starting your own business or you're doing something of that nature, we're in the process right now. I have put together, or am putting together, a board of directors, completely volunteer, out of people and experts and folks that I know that are willing, for my own business. Because there's no reason that you can't go out and look for people. Even if you're a solopreneur, you can still go out and look for people that might be willing to sit once a month for an hour and talk about your business and help you with that. So it does not have to be lonely is my only challenge to anybody that does feel that way. So one thing I definitely wanted to touch on was, as well, because it's everywhere we turn today. I use it on a daily basis, and that's AI. What do you see? You were an editor. Is AI going to put editors out of business? But I'm really curious, what role does technology like AI play in streamlining operations? And secondarily, if you are utilizing that, how do you think we maintain human-centered leadership around that?
Oh, I think that's where the integrity aspect comes to it. I was still at the media company when Chat GPT's first version was getting rolled out to the public, and the day it happened, all the editors were like, "Hey, did you hear about this thing? Dude, they just released AI. It's open source, and or it's not open source, but it's just open to the public to use." And it was this big thing where people were trying to prompt it in its first version, and then editors, I think, were already onto it. They were like, "Oh, dude, this thing can write articles for you." And in the creative space, I think that's one aspect of it, but the applications for AI are endless. Email marketers, writing code. That was actually before all the article writing kind of hype came up. That's the big sector, or big function of business that was really stoked. They were like, "Man, this thing just spits out code, and you can design entire, widgets by just prompting it." So I'm just kind of throwing out all these different things that I remember from that time, 2 years ago. But that's just a quick example of some of the opportunities. I think the important thing that we have to remember to do in this early stage of AI becoming public use is weave integrity into what you do. There's best practices. We learn about, citing people's work, giving credit where credit is due. And part of that to me is also qualifying that. If you're making a big decision and you use a little bit of AI, I mean, it's in your best interest to be candid, I think, with your stakeholders. Hey guys, just came up with this, this sales projection. Here's 3 scenarios for next year. Here's our Godzilla scenario, here's our optimistic, and then kind of just, our pessimistic. I want to be frank though, prompted this a little bit with AI, but I qualified it. I refined it with what we know, what we've talked about, being experts in this industry. But, the foundation had a little bit of help from our friend Chat or Claude, whoever it is,
Yep.
Not sponsored. But I think just getting back to that point, citing your work, having integrity of where you're getting your sources, where you're getting your help from. And then, sure. Like you had mentioned, I know, jokingly, is it going to take over like writers' jobs or anybody's jobs? It could. That's just my professional opinion. But my leadership coaching response to anybody who has that fear is, you're focusing on something that hasn't happened yet. And there's way too many factors that are there. There are a lot of circumstances and factors that will happen between now and then that are yet to be written. What can we do right now? And if that's a concern, if you have an existential crisis about, as a professional and as an individual, like, I don't want to contribute to that negative outcome. Well, what are the ways that you can limit or refine your use of it to where you can still maximize its ability, but you don't feel like you're contributing to whatever that negative outcome is then? Maybe you don't, I know some people that are having this thing write entire finals, essays, manuscripts. Maybe you can still, I said this in an Instagram post once, and it was recently. Manufacture a little bit of hardship into what we do. That's going to be honestly the key to human preservation. Never losing at least 1%, at least 10%. If there's a detour that you can take, but that old school long route's there, do it on purpose. If not for anything, for maintaining your ability and your capability, because things are going to continue to get easier and more convenient. We all know the movie WALL-E. I think that's a scarily great lesson about the potential of what happens if we just kind of like allow it completely to do everything for us.
So I have went back, Thomas Jefferson, somebody asked Thomas Jefferson when he was president, why do you not have a speechwriter? And Thomas Jefferson said, why would I want to allow someone else to write what's going to come out of my mouth? And so I've kind of taken that to heart. And what I utilize AI, I utilize it in our podcasting efforts. I utilize it, for instance, I just finished an article this morning about finding the right team members. And so it's my article. I wrote it, and I won't give up that portion of it, sitting down and writing it. I went back to AI and said, uploaded my article and said, analyze and tell me if I should change, my change order or, how's the flow of the article. It gave me a few suggestions. I sat down. I did not use the words that they gave me, but I changed my flow in my own words. And then I will utilize, AI to help for LinkedIn posts and things like that. But it's my content. And so I think to your point, I would agree 100%. Don't give up everything, because nobody can recreate what's in your mind, and, so anyhow, I appreciate that. The last thing I kind of wanted to touch on, or I guess the last question, thinking about, the folks that you're working with, thinking about our listeners, what are some actionable practices that somebody that's just getting started in leadership you would recommend to them? Maybe, your top 1 or 2 things that they can do out of the gate that will help set them up for success.
Doing a self-audit of what your strengths are and what your passions are, and then where your gaps are. You know, I'm still of the school of thought that it's important. Like I am a I'm a big believer in Gallup's and the Clifton Strengths Finder. I love the metaphor that the book brings up in the very beginning. It's like the movie Rudy, where Rudy, by all account, American classic film, spends a lot of time, trying to get that victory at the end. And it paints a compelling and I think reflection worthy thought. It's like, do you spend time doubling down on your strengths and creating a life of impact around that, or do you try to focus heavily on your gaps and bringing your gap up? So I'm a big believer in, like, I think that we should, like, especially if you have, opportunities for improvement, that if you spent a little time improving, but we're just talking skill set, right? Like if you have a particular skill set, understand what that is and lean into it, and then start owning your outcomes, and just owning life by saying, I'm going to create opportunities for everyone else and myself and all my endeavors by maximizing my capabilities. So I think, but you can't do that without doing what we've just first talked about, which is doing that internal self-audit. If you don't know, like, everyone should at the very least casually have a notepad or note in your phone. What are my strengths? What are my passions? What are my opportunities? And then second, I think every quarter, at least, I believe this, every quarter, do an audit of what your visions are. And I don't, for me, a quarter is awesome because I think it marries an idea of being okay with change. I love the Japanese philosophy of wabi-sabi, and I think life and business are best executed personally when you have that harmony, that balance of proper planning, but adaptability. So, having a grand vision, your 1-year vision, your 10 mini objectives that are going to serve that vision. It's good to have them, but you should probably look at it. You're not so much that you're like obsessing over it and then like you're not analysis paralysis and not moving, but things change. Just like in sales, right? Like, we have to look at the weekly projections and you have to adjust if things aren't going the right way. You're ultimately leading your sales team, down the wrong path, and you're not staffing resources accordingly if you don't look at it. So there's just a nice balance, I think, of auditing and then having a nice plan in place as well.
Awesome. I like that. I think Stephen Covey said in the 7 Habits that over the next 90 days, something will happen that you had no idea was going to happen that will change your trajectory. And I believe that to be
Right.
true. And so that makes sense that you need to go back and check in on your goals from time to time. So before we kind of head into our final little section here at the end, I want to make sure I give people the opportunity. Where can they find out more about you? Where can they get engaged with you?
Yeah, I appreciate that. If you guys ever wanted to chat, you can find information about the practice, the consultancy, at braveleadershipguild.com. I'm also very active on LinkedIn under my personal name. You can just search it under Andrew Almazan. And lastly, on Instagram as well, at instagram.com/Brave Leadership Guild.
Awesome. And we'll be sure to have all of those links in the show notes as well. So as we come to an end, I like to end by asking all of our guests 3 questions, kind of rapid fire, I guess, if you will. The first question is, if we could magically get all the school administrators from across the world sitting in front of us in one room, and you had an opportunity to give them one piece of advice of something that they should be including in a student's career so that maybe we end up with better leaders in the futures, what would that one piece of advice be?
I would teach kids, teach them the art of gaining buy-in.
Awesome.
Teaching the art of gaining buy-in on any initiative. I think that being able to, we talked about this earlier, taking an idea and then packaging it and refining that delivery based on the stakeholder receiving it. That message might be different for the board of directors versus, the people on the line.
Absolutely. I like it. Second question, throughout your career, what is your go-to book that you've continually went back to and gained good insight out of?
Oh man, if it's acceptable, Amos, I'd love to provide two real quick, and it's Be Excellent at Anything, as well as Fierce Conversations by Susan Scott.
Awesome.
Those two served me well.
Awesome. And the last question is, in all the technology, software, and things that are available to us today, what is your favorite piece of technology that you find useful today?
I think Google's suite of software has stood the test of time for me as a people operations and even an assistant GM these days, as well as coaching. Everything you got that you need is in there.
Awesome. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for joining us today. I had a lot of fun in the conversation. Hopefully, maybe we can have you back on in the future, but thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Amos. I appreciate the time and hope everybody has an amazing week.
Awesome. And for our listeners, if you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to check out our past episodes. Don't forget to follow us on whatever platform you're listening so you get alerts when the new episodes come out. And lastly, this is the first announcement we have added in the show notes. You'll be able to find it as well as on our website. If you give us your email address each week when we have new episodes coming out, we will send out to you a worksheet that summarizes and gives some working points from each one of our podcasts. So don't forget to sign up for that if you'd like to receive it. Until next time, we appreciate all of you.